Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Curious Formula Live. I am your host and moderator, Curious Formula. Thank you all for being here and rocking with your boy. We are going live now, just getting some things straight. Before we get into it, thank you for being here. Come to listen to what we have to say. We're building it as we fly. This is a song. I want to hear what you guys think. This might be my opening song. Take a little listen to it as we set up here. Tell me what you think. If this should be our opening song or not. Okay. I think that's enough for us tonight. Well, tell me what you think, because that may be the beginning of our nights here together, where we start talking about issues and the like. And if you like the song, it may stick around. It may actually be maybe something that we actually go to, and so I appreciate you being here. So we are live. And oops, turn this volume down a little bit here. So again, we're going to start talking first about that alternative facts are killing America. What do I mean by that? Well, stick around. But first, you gotta, subscribe. You gotta like. You gotta hit the notification button so that we can let you know when we go live. We go live every Wednesday night, normally at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But tonight we had a couple of little delays, some things I was working on. So we're starting at 10. But we're going to talk about alternative facts. So years ago, Donald Trump assumed the presidency in 2016. Kellyanne Conway, his campaign manager, was on a TV show, and she talked about, she was warring back and forth with the commentator about, facts. And Donald Trump says this when the facts are actually this. And Donald Trump says this, and the facts are actually this. And she came up with the statement in quotes that she should have copyrighted, actually. She said, well, we have alternative facts. And a lot of people laughed. Some people said, that's typical Trumpian logistics, Trumpian talk, if you will. And they let it kind of go. They kind of said, hey, yeah, that's the way Trump looks at the world. But it started to take on a life of its own. And really right after that, we start seeing Donald Trump, MAGA folks, the Republican Party to a lesser extent, start adopting this idea of alternative facts. So much so that when we had the inauguration of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, has a way of saying the stupendous, right? The great, we are the greatest this. I'm the greatest this. I'm the only one that can do this. Well, he literally said that his inauguration was the largest attended inauguration in the history of the United States. We all know that's not true. And park rangers started saying that's not true. Actually, Barack Obama's was. And you could look at a picture and see, that it was wall to wall, almost all the way to the Capitol, from the Capitol, almost to some of the monuments in the back. And Donald Trump had patches all over the place. It was not even probably more well attended than Bill Clinton's or George W. Bush's, but they stuck to it. And then literally a week after Donald Trump took office, the economic report came out for the month of December. I'm sorry, in February, a month later after his inauguration, the January report came out in terms of economic strength of the country, and it showed that it was now the 73rd month of continued growth. And Donald Trump's press secretary said, see, we're already having an effect on the economy. And someone said, but you haven't even passed anything. You just gotten in office. You haven't even done an executive order to deal with anything in the economy. He said, nope, we're taking credit for it. They literally were taking credit for the Barack Obama 72-month of continuous growth, the longest period of economic growth and in the history of the nation. They literally took credit for it. And there's been tons of other examples that I can share with you over the years that we all know too well. But we literally can't, in this space, as content creators, really even talk about what is factual, what is true. If you go on anything on TikTok or here, you have whole pages dedicated to untruths, not just the headlines, but really people bearing down on things that at their root, at their foundation, are not true. Here's an example here. I put this on here, something that we talked about on my TikTok channel, that the BBC, as you all know, I'm not a big fan of MSNBC or Fox Entertainment or News Nation or Newsmax or CNN. I'm not really a fan of a lot of content creators who are ideologically so ideologically inept, so ideologically lodged that they can't see the forest for the trees. They have blinders on. They can't accept the theory or the facts or data put forward by somebody else who may have a different worldview, whether it's factual, even if it's factual and data-based and irrefutable. So we did something on TikTok, if you're a fan of mine there, curious_formula, where we talked about the economy. And the BBC put forward a really good article by Jake Horton. I advise you all to go look at it. I'll try to put it in the chat, the link to it. But what was interesting about this was it said, is the U.S. economy better or worse now than under Trump? And you know, here in this content, if you follow me, we pull no punches. We tell the truth about the Democrats and the Republicans. We tell the truth about Joe Biden's record, Kamala Harris's record, and Donald Trump's record. And the conclusion we come to is that Donald Trump did some good things in office. Joe Biden did some good things in office. Kamala Harris did some good things in office. And both of them, all three of them at some level, can take credit for the economy and what's happening economically. But if you're a Trump supporter, far be it for you to understand and admit that Joe Biden did good things for this economy. If you're a Biden or Harris supporter, far put it away from you that some kind of way Donald Trump actually may have done something positive. The BBC gave a real good analysis that was factually based and actually on point in terms of deciphering, unpacking which president, which administration actually did what for the economy in the last 5 to 6 years. And we read a little bit about it and we cited it. And you know what happened? Every Trump person said we were lying about Biden. Every Biden person, Harris person said we were lying about Donald Trump. Or they said, well, the BBC is liberal or the BBC is conservative. And it just goes to show you that people can't look outside of their own vacuum, their own ideological world. Well, folks, here we're going to talk about truth. Here we're going to talk about what is actual, what is factual. And yes, there are some things that are going to make Republicans and Donald Trump look good. Some things that are going to make Biden and Harris look good. Some things that are going to make them look bad. But it's going to be based on data and truth. And we're going to start doing that on a regular basis here. So let's start talking about what the article actually said, because I actually want to read whole pieces about it. So it talks about sort of U.S. economic growth. And it says that although the impact of COVID had made comparison difficult, they have ways that they can look at both presidents and can count for some notable economic successes despite wages struggling under both. So they look at GDP, for instance. Following the pandemic, the economy bounced back strongly under Trump and recovered better than many other Western countries. If you read my content, if you watch my content, you know, that's what we always say, right? We say that America has had a terrible economy, but it's bounced back better than most of the industrialized other nations of the world, definitely better than the other members of the G7. And this article points that out. This has continued under Mr. Biden, it says, with the U.S. producing the strongest pandemic recovery within the G7 as measured by GDP. Trump supporters, this is not debatable. This is fact. And you can look it up yourself. Here's some information here. Here's a chart that actually shows you GDP percentage change on previous quarters. And you can see the Biden record and the Trump record. It's right there. Look, okay? But over Trump's 4 years in office, it was not the greatest economy in the U.S. as he likes to claim. Between January 2017 and January 2021, average annual growth rate was 2.3%. Not bad, not great. But this period also includes a slowdown and recovery of the economy as a result of the COVID panic, which is what I always tell Trump supporters. I don't hang on. It's going to talk about it here. The 6.3% unemployment that Donald Trump left the country when he left office, the 4 million jobs that he lost, the only president to have lost jobs at the end of his term since, I think, Herbert Hoover. That's all true. And Trump people go, that's not true. It is true. But it's also because of COVID. Because pre-COVID, Donald Trump created 6 to 7 million jobs, which this article is going to point out. But they don't also give the same grace to Joe Biden, that Joe Biden inherited an economy that was coming out of COVID. And that's where inflation sprung. Inflation came from us coming out of COVID, just like it sprang in Spain and in France and in Germany and in Great Britain and Japan and Russia and in China and every other country in the world. Coming out of COVID is why inflation is high worldwide. It's also the same reason why Donald Trump lost jobs and had a high unemployment rate, which we don't have right now. Okay? Just trying to put this into perspective here. So 2.3% annual growth rate under Donald Trump. But under the Biden administration so far, this figure is 2.2. It's about the same. And there have been periods in the past when GDP growth was significantly higher than the average under both Trump and Biden, such as the 1970s. Which I will also say was under President Nixon. And Nixon has actually engaged in price gouging and price controls. But I digress. In terms of inflation, let's talk about inflation. Everybody's talking about inflation. Joe Biden doesn't know what he's doing with inflation. Inflation blew up under Joe Biden. Here are the facts. The rate at which prices rose significantly during the first 2 years under Mr. Biden, hitting a peak of 9.1% in June 2022. That was what the inflation rate was at the highest level under Joe Biden, 9.1% in June 2022. And Trump has said that the U.S. has experienced the worst inflation we've ever had. But that's not true. Inflation was last above 9% in 1981, and it's been higher than that at several points in U.S. history. Inflation now has fallen to around 3%, but it remains higher than when Trump left office. Now, when Trump left office, it was a little bit lower than that, but not much. We're at 2.9% now if you look at this. And when Trump left office, we were at about 1.9%. About 1.9% when you look at these numbers here. Okay, it was low, but we're almost back at that level now. And we're definitely back at the level of unemployment that we were at in 2020. If you see this here, 2.9%. And in here, this is where it was in 2020. So Biden has railed in inflation from a high down to almost where it was when Donald Trump left office. Not bad at all. But I will share with you that as Trump talks about how well he's done in terms of inflation, look where it was lower under Obama in 2014. So for all this talk about Democrats and Obama and Biden not knowing what they're doing, the inflation rate was lower under Obama than it was under Trump. In fact, if you look at Trump's whole time here where inflation is, most of Obama's time, this is us coming down from the Great Recession, but most of this was lower than Donald Trump's time from 2012 to 2016 when he left office. Okay? So, it's the only point I'm trying to make. These are facts. These are from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which Donald Trump uses to talk about how good his record is. It's the same thing you have to look at when we talk about Joe Biden's record. Grocery prices, for example, increased by 13.5% over the year ending in August 2022. And that was at the peak under the Biden administration. But I just wanted to show you the numbers as they are in terms of reality and data. In terms of employment, the Biden administration has repeatedly pointed to strong job growth as a major achievement. Before big job losses in 2020 due to COVID, in the first 3 years of Trump's presidency, almost 6.7 million jobs were added. And that's according to data for non-farm jobs, which covers about 80% of workers in the labor force. That's what it says here. There's been an increase of almost 16 million jobs since the Biden administration took over in January 2021. Okay? Again, you can look at it here. Where's the source? The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's the same source that the Donald Trump campaign uses and that he uses to tout his successes, right? It's the same way it touts the Biden successes. And there it is for you, okay? Now, Mr. Biden claimed that this is the fastest job growth at any point of any president in all of American history, and that's correct. If you look at the available data since records began in 1939, So it may not be in history, but it certainly is that since 1939. But now his administration has benefited from a sharp rebound in economic activity as the country has emerged from pandemic lockdowns. Many of the jobs that would, and this is a quote from Professor Mark Strain, an economist at Georgetown University, many of the jobs would have come back if Trump had won in 2020. But the American Rescue Plan played a major role in the speed and the aggressiveness of the labor market recovery. Again, these are factual things. The spending plan passed in the Biden 2021, it was designed to help stimulate the economy following the pandemic, but there had been weaker than expected job growth in July, which led to fears of a sudden downturn in the U.S. economy, and stock markets were hit as a result, but they have since stabilized. Remember all the fear mongering that a lot of Republicans and Donald Trump said for that one really bad day the stock market had? They said a recession is coming. Well, folks, that's not what most economists are saying right now. In terms of wages, let's talk about that very quickly. In terms of wages, these are not rising to Trump either. They're not rising to Trump, but at a similar rate to his President Barack Obama up until the pandemic hit, right? Workers' wages increased rapidly at the start of 2020 during the COVID pandemic, but the sudden uptick in wages was linked to lower paid workers being more likely to be laid off, which raised the average wage of people who were still unemployed. Under Mr. Biden, average weekly earnings have grown, but they have struggled to keep up with the increase in prices caused by high levels of inflation. So that is true when Republicans talk about that the job creations that have happened, that the wages that are going with these jobs have not been able to really fight and out-earn, if you will, the increases in prices that have happened as a result of that. Folks, the financial markets, I'll end it with this one here. The U.S. financial stock market isn't necessarily a reflection of the broader economy, and I agree with this BBC article, but many Americans have investments, so its performance holds some importance. The Dow Jones Index, which is the measurement of the performance of 30 large companies listed on the U.S. stock exchanges, this has been its record. It reached record highs during the Trump presidency, but crashed as markets reacted to the pandemic, wiping out all the gains made by Trump. However, the financial markets recovered to above pre-pandemic levels by the time Trump left office in 2021. So Donald Trump gets some credit for the stock market making a recovery, but that has continued to grow under Joe Biden. And although there have been recent wobbles, as I mentioned earlier, they have reached record levels under his administration as well. And I will add record highs in the history of America under Joe Biden. So I'm not saying this is make you change your mind, to make you think about, that's not going to make me change my mind about me supporting Donald Trump or supporting Joe Biden. The only point I'm trying to get over to you folks are these matters are not black and white. It's not Joe Biden doesn't know how to run an economy and look what happened to him. It's not that Donald Trump doesn't know how to run an economy, so look at what happened under him. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and you need to analyze it based on data and facts and not what you hear on those algorithm providing content creators that you all watch, or the 24-hour cable news network, which always tells you about a third, not even half, a third about what actually is real and true, even if on the left and the right, and you don't get the full picture. Educate yourself, look at other sources like the BBC, like The Economist, like Der Spiegel, like other economic and other worldviews from outside of the normal algorithm that you're used to get your facts and to understand what's really happening in the world. Okay, let's talk now about, oh my goodness, this is what I've been waiting to talk about for a long time, and we're going to talk about it now. So you all know that I love to talk about the Manosphere, and the Black Manosphere in particular. And why do I like to talk about them? I'll tell you why I like to talk about them. I like to talk about them because the idiocracy of the Black Manosphere, the political idiocracy of the Black Manosphere, is horrific and getting worse. And I found a video that I want to show you to be indicative of. Now, as you all know, I always give a disclaimer. A number of these content creators, I respect their work. I respect their thoughts. I respect their opinions and their data and their anecdotes when it comes to a number of other issues. Some of those issues are, marriage and relationships and the role of the black male, the role of the black woman, and how our culture is tearing us apart, is low level on some at some aspects, are not our best selves, and they're good on self-improvement and understanding the nature of our community and understanding the nature of economics and building yourself up. Part of the people in this, Kevin Samuels is probably the biggest, most famous example, the most successful example of this. But there are a number of other content creators that I listen to and follow because they have a lot of good things to say. The unfortunate part about them is that they have nothing of consequence to say about politics, and they're all wading in to give their take. Usually a takedown of Kamala Harris, and usually either an uplifting of Donald Trump, or by not saying support that person, by tearing down a Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party, they are in the same vein pushing up Donald Trump because there's only two that you could vote for, right? Here's the example of it. Poor Man's Podcast, somebody I think you should all go to and like, subscribe to his channel. He has a lot to say. I think it's good stuff. But he put forth a video about Anton Daniels, who's another content creator I listen to. But again, it's totally lost about politics, knows nothing about government, knows nothing about policies, and have adopted wholesale the Republican talking points that you can find on Fox News, or you can Google yourself, or you see on a lot of right-wing, alt-right, more importantly, and more emphatically, on YouTube and other places. And so this is a round table that Anton Daniels participates in with other black content creators. They talk about issues of the day. And the headline of Poor Man's Podcast is deceiving on itself. Democrats shocked that black voters are starting to turn on Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has tripled the support she has amongst African Americans since she's become the nominee of the Democratic Party. And as such, that's why she's leading Donald Trump in all the polls. But this, again, is how the headline grabs you in and sucks you in and make you look at it. And maybe that's what his intent was. But I'm just going to go back to what something that Anton Daniels said in terms of his discussion with these women. There was a comment made by a woman on the panel that she was going to vote for Kamala Harris because she was black. And she wanted a black woman to see what she could do. Now, look, I think that's a dumb statement too, right? But Anton Daniels' comeback on her is all dripping with MAGA and with Fox News and News Nation and Newsmax written all over it. Just listen to what he says here.
With some of the most powerful leaders in the world, she failed at the border, in which we have an estimation of 15 to 20 million people illegally into this country.
There are not 15 to 20 million people illegally coming into this country. That is a talking point that Donald Trump uses. Sometimes it's 10 million, sometimes it's 50 million, sometimes it's 20 million, right? There is no documentation anywhere for that. And Anton Daniels doesn't even refer to any documentation for that. He's just talking. And look how everybody's just watching him talk as if he's some kind of expert on this or has some kind of knowledge or some kind of reference for where he's getting these stats. It gets worse.
That is literally overtaking and bankrupting Chicago to the tune of over $400 million per year. And
now he blames illegal immigration for bankrupting Chicago because they have a $400 million deficit. You could just use ChatGPT to find out why they have a deficit. It has nothing to do with illegal immigration.
They're in a deficit. Oakland is going out of business. San Francisco, ditto. California, $65 billion deficit. New York, they're literally cutting trash, in which they are the rattiest, dirtiest city. And they've taken up resources as far as free healthcare, free hotels to the tune of $600 a day. They're literally taking over your schools. Your taxpayer dollars are going to fund the migrant crisis.
And look at people that's shaking their heads like, yeah.
We have a failing economy every single day.
Now, how is it a failing economy when 16 million jobs are being created, when unemployment is at its lowest, when black employment is at its highest, not under Donald Trump, under this administration? These are all facts that you can actually check. And he run these things off just like, any commentator would on Fox News, like Laura Ingraham, like any of these folks, without any any sources, primary or secondary, to back up what they're saying. And the people here on the panel are so not involved in politics, so far removed from policy, that they accept it as truth from God Almighty because Anton Daniels is the one saying it.
I see people getting on the internet talking about $30 an hour is the new minimum wage because inflation is fucking out of control. At one point, it was at almost 10%, depending on what city that you in. She has no policy, no record to stand on.
Again, Kamala Harris, now, he was right. Inflation did get to 9.1%. We just talked about that. That's factual. Now, that's the first fact he actually said. But then he said she has no record. There's nothing she's ever done. Before we end this night, we're going to go over the record of Harris and Biden so that you all can see for yourself exactly what the record is. But it's very easy to say she's never done anything. She ain't do nothing. What is her record? Hold tight.
One of the biggest things that she did in her career was lock up more black men than ever before. But we sitting here and voting her in office on identity politics.
Again, not true. Offers no sources, no facts to back that up. That has been something that we understood and knocked down 4 years ago. That Kamala Harris somehow locked everybody up and all those kind of things. Now it's interesting that he says that as a talking point that they use against in the black community, Republicans are putting in the black community to give talking points to conservatives like Anton Daniels, like Poor Man's Podcast, to try to get black people to turn on her. But then the white folks say that she's soft on crime. You see, the conservatives who talk to other white conservatives, they say that she was soft on crime. White conservatives trying to get black conservatives will say, well, she locked brothers up. That's what she did. Do you see how the game is being played here? Let's continue.
The very person that she was under as far as the president of the United States of America, she called him racist during a debate.
Again, not true. You can look this up yourself. She did not call Joe Biden a racist. She questioned his support for the 1994 crime bill, which I always tell people, Donald Trump supported too. He just wasn't in office. As I always point out, Democrats supported too, and Republicans. Everybody in 1994 was signing on to the crime bill, and Republicans were the main ones pushing it. Democrats joined them. Congressional Black Caucus did join them, but everybody supported it, including Donald Trump.
Right. Which shows you how fake she is. And the only thing that we can stand on from a policy perspective is whether or not she's black and she's a woman. We did that during the Obama administration, and he didn't do anything for black people.
Here we go again. Obama never did anything for black people. The list is long, and I'm happy to go on a platform right here and talk about the long list of things that he did for black people, things he did for every people, right? But here's what Anton Daniels and people like him from this Black Manosphere swear. And I love Roland Martin because he knocks these arguments down emphatically. There is no president that can legally put forth legislation signed to it, pass legislation and sign into law, any kind of bill or legislation that supports and only helps one ethnic group. This does not happen. There are things that you can pass that help people that are impoverished, and if African Americans and Latinos and other ethnic groups are disproportionately represented in that class in terms of poverty or low wage job opportunities, an overall bill that attacks poverty is going to disproportionately help African Americans, disproportionately help Latinos, disproportionately help any other ethnic group that may be suffering that. But there's never going to be a black bill or a Latino bill. And Anton Daniels, the Republican, knows that. And if you're not getting it with the Democrats, what in the hell makes you think you're going to get it with Donald Trump and the Republicans that you didn't get in the first 4 years? And that's what's interesting to me, is that they don't point to any race-based legislation that was created just for black people under Donald Trump, or just for Latinos under Donald Trump, or just for anybody under any president, period. It's ludicrous.
As a matter of fact, y'all complain because the only person that he did, or the only group of people that he really stood for, is the alphabet community. And that's his landmark thing that he's still standing on today. So
he's a good representation of what you would consider to be a black Republican or a black conservative. Oh yeah, let's focus on the policy. Focus on the policy. Don't vote for a person because of their skin color. And once you get past that, look into what they actually stand for and what they've done and what their track record is.
And that's the problem. because they will say that's what you're supposed to do. But people like Poor Man's Podcast don't even Google the record. Don't even Google what they've done. Don't even Google their preparation. They make broadside statements over and over and over again and expect people, because people like their content, respect how they speak about other things that they do have knowledge about, but think that that means that they have knowledge about everything. These fools are bootlicking supplicants to the right, and more emphatically to the alt-right. And that is a disservice to black people, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Right now, I'm not seeing nothing on Kamala's side. I seen a video recently, and maybe I can get the image of it. It was a woman who said she went up to a counter, and there was a receipt left on the counter. It was a black woman talking about this. I believe it was in New York or Chicago, one of those major cities where they're letting in a lot of immigrants. And maybe I can get the picture of the receipt, but there was a receipt left on the counter, and on the receipt, it said this person had $4,000 worth of access to cash. This was an
Now, listen how stupid that sounds, right? Immigrants cannot qualify for welfare if they're not a citizen. This woman put his evidence of this is that he has this thing here. You don't know who it belongs to. You don't know what that is a balance of. It's an EBT cash balance. You don't know if that's an immigrant's cash balance. There's not a name on there. There's not anything on there. That's somebody with a receipt. That could be anything. But this is his proof, not data and statistics. That he doesn't quote anything that says how many, what's it alleged that how many illegal immigrants are getting government programs, because they can't. They don't qualify. They can't even apply. There's a background check for all this kind of stuff. And it's a rhetorical talking point that the right uses to scare black people. The problem I have is that this black man and people like Anton Daniels and other people like Melanie King are pushing a narrative that's not helping anybody black. You're not helping anybody by putting out this foolishness without any source of data, evidence, research. The very same things they tell black people they need to do about every other subject, they don't even do with a Google search about politics and policies. This is idiocracy.
Immigrant that left a receipt after buying some groceries, right? $4,000 worth of cash and like $12,000 worth of EBT. $12,000 worth of EBT. Getting access to that. Ain't paid a single dollar in taxes. Getting access to that kind of treatment in our country.
Okay, that is just asinine and stupid. At the end of the day, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. But here's this fool, Anton, and I call him a fool in this respect, because here he is appearing on Fox News with none other than, who I mentioned earlier, Laura Ingraham. Let's hear about Laura. Oh, here he's clean cut. Look at this, guys. No hat turn on backwards
YouTuber
here.
and content creator. Anton, let's start with you. You just went viral for an exchange that you had with a Kamala supporter. Let's watch.
Would you vote for?
Yeah.
Why?
Okay, we've seen this before.
I'm gonna just be real.
Laura Ingraham.
I think I forwarded that to.
So let me tell you about Laura Ingraham, and I love talking about Laura Ingraham. When I was a city councilman in Newark, New Jersey, we had a tragedy in my ward. 3 young people were brutally unalived by a group of young men who were troubled, who were trying to do initiation rites to start an MS-13 gang in a very residential, middle-class community, back end of that part of Newark called Ivy Hill. And it was the back end of Seton Hall University. And I went on live TV shows talking about the tragedy, talking about our communities. And I even went on right-wing shows like Laura Ingraham's radio show, because I wanted to show people that my community that I represented were hardworking people, multi-ethnic. It's the most multi-ethnic community, my ward, that part of my ward, in North Jersey. Every race, color, and creed lives there, and we live there harmoniously. And this crime, was an outlier crime that has not happened before, has not happened since in that community. And I went to show that because I knew what the right wing was going to do. People like Laura Ingraham, they would have tried and show Newark was this crime-infested, run over by ethnics crossing the border and SAing people and unaliving people. And I didn't want to stand for that. And I said, absolutely not. So I put forward the face of my community. I even had Greta Van Susteren come to Newark, and she filmed the area, and I walked her through it. But I said, you have to film the playground across the street, the park across the street from where this horrific thing happened at the school, and you see everybody here. You see a Jewish couple there. You see Asians. You see Pakistani. You see African American, Latino, Korean, Caribbean. You saw everybody there because that was who our community was. And to her credit, Greta Van Susteren, shout out to her, showed that and showed the whole story about our community. Laura Ingham basically told me, you're a tool of Obama. I see you're an Obama supporter here, so I know how you feel about immigration. And basically, just wait for the takeover of Newark by these illegal immigrants. So we already know what side of the bread is buttered for her and her opinion about folks who come from other countries that are brown.
20 of my friends. That was such an awesome takedown. But tell us about that, because I saw some of the other participants like nervously drinking their Coke or whatever they were drinking. But tell us about your interactions with people who happen to be African American who instinctively seem to go for Kamala because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. I think it's unfortunate because the majority of my interactions is me being looked at as the bad guy, because ultimately they think that I'm supposed to be on code, even though I know and they know that it's not in our best interest, in my family's best interest, in the country's best interest. And when we continue to play identity politics, the thing that they usually refer to is our previous history in electing people in office that ultimately even they will concede that they didn't have our best interests at heart. And so when I'm in.
So now I love this discussion, and I'm going to end it with this because I don't go too long on this. I love when black conservatives talk about the Democratic Party and these black leaders in office. They don't do anything for us. They don't provide anything for us. Why are we voting for them? Why do we keep voting for them? Probably because the same reason why white rural conservatives support Republicans in places like Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and Louisiana and South Carolina and Tennessee, where they have no access to good jobs, horrible education systems, the worst quality of life of any state in the nation, all reside in the South, lowest test scores for education, poor infrastructure, poor health care, an opioid crisis that is exploding, and no good roads. I was in Mississippi for a conference, and I was on the main road to this resort area I was going to were abandoned tractors all along the highway, housing on the way, 10 roofs, on shacks. And these weren't black people living in these things. These were white folks. And so the question is always funny to me when I hear black folks talk about what have the black elected officials done for our community. What has the Democratic Party done for black people? Well, I ask the same question. What has the Republican Party done for white rural voters? What has the Republican Party and conservative Republican elected officials done for them for generations? It's the ineptitude of looking at it through a certain prism and not holding other people accountable in the same way you want to hold our leaders accountable.
Interacting with these people, often at times it's very difficult for them to step outside of being on code in order to do the thing that's even in their best interest. So I'm often looked at as a bad guy, but in reality, they know I'm telling the truth, and that's why it's so difficult for them to be able to convey and then debate what it is that I'm telling them, because they already know what the truth is.
The debate with him never happens because the people he engages with don't have the wherewithal, the tools, the knowledge, the understanding of politics and policy to debate you.
They're not unfamiliar with what it is that they experienced over the last 3.5 years. They're suffering. They don't have jobs.
There's 16 million new jobs in America because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
They have lower wages. They can't pay their bills.
The wages are the same under Joe Biden as they've been under Donald Trump.
And so when they experience this, but it's very difficult for us as a community to then break away from the popular thing to do because they don't want to be a part of the cool kids club anymore.
Yeah, I'd say too, a big issue in the African-American community, especially amongst black men, is there isn't enough political awareness. Like there's a lot of dudes, like for black men specifically.
And he's one of them. Sorry, Poor Man's Podcast. Sorry, Anton Daniels. You're out of your depth, and you need to go back to talking about what you actually know about. Stay out of grown folks' business, and stay out of conversations that you have no background, no knowledge, and you really have the gall to not even do a simple Google search to find out what the facts actually are. We're going to keep coming back to these kind of videos because these people are doing a disservice to our community, and they're doing a disservice to Americans, and they know the poison they're pushing. But I digress. All right. My country, my way. So when we talk about sort of where we are in terms of the world and in terms of, how did we get here to such a divisive government? How did we get here to such a divisive world? How did we get here where our politics are so poisoned? Folks, you need to look no further than the administrations of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. But a lot of people who are a little bit younger, I'm a little bit older than a lot of you all who watch this content or who are on social media, people think that it really got nasty when we elected a black man as president under Barack Obama. No. This started under a guy named Bill Clinton, who won a race in 1992 against George Herbert Walker Bush in a race, and in a year that Republicans didn't think any Democrat had any right to win against him. And indeed, as I've talked about on my content here, Bill Clinton does not win in 1992 if Ross Perot is not the candidate. Ross Perot wins and takes vital votes away from the Republican coalition, and Bill Clinton wins states that Democrats had not won in years, and he wins the Electoral College as a result of that. But the immediacy after Bill Clinton wins, then the fight starts and gets nasty, personality driven, and there's a real sort of civil war happening politically in America that's based on policy, worldview, ideology, and the context of which is we're still starting to suffer from. The real fight began in the 1994 midterm elections in that year, and just listen to a little bit about what the world was like in the 90s.
Republicans now are beginning to talk openly about taking control of the House and the Senate.
Sometimes midterms can be not that interesting. Voters aren't paying attention in the way they are surrounding a presidential election. The stakes often seem lower. But the 1994 election was, without a doubt, one of the most significant of the 20th century.
This is one of the most profound days in American history.
We didn't do what the people wanted us to do. I must certainly bear my share of responsibility, and I accept that.
It brought to the fore some of these ideas that are still with us. It was just a tremendous landmark election.
You know people who've lost their jobs, lost their homes.
Bill Clinton was far and away the best politician I've ever seen.
In my state, when people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names.
He had that easy way of communicating. He could take the most complex idea and explain it in ways that ordinary people could understand. That combination is lethal.
But just 2 years into his presidency, Bill Clinton's centrist charm had already worn off for many Americans.
Many Democratic candidates are keeping their distance from the president.
Despite fashioning himself a new kind of Democrat in his run for president,
they don't think the way the old Democratic Party did.
Clinton had tried to walk a political tightrope that still accomplished liberal policy ideals.
Solving our nation's health care crisis.
Along with tapping the First Lady to lead a failed attempt at universal health care, he signed a policy known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell that allowed gays to serve anonymously in the military and supported a 10-year ban on high-capacity firearms as part of a major anti-crime bill.
A midterm election, people think that it's a referendum on the sitting president, and it usually is. Clinton and the Democrats were not all that popular in 1994, and the Republicans really worked to capitalize that.
Dance lessons, midnight basketball, new restrictive gun controls.
The rallying cry for Republicans that year was God, guns, and gays. God. Let's take religion into account, anti-abortion, gays, because Clinton had signed the Don't Ask, Don't Tell bill, and guns.
So, as you can tell, not a lot has changed in 30 years. Literally, guns, God, and gays are the secret sauce that the Republicans are using to make us a divided nation yet again. It reoccurs because Republicans, by the numbers, don't have the votes that they normally have in terms of winning an election straight up. There are more registered Democrats and independents than there are Republicans nationwide. And the Electoral College, while they're still very competitive in there, we're competitive right now, if this was an election, if our elections were decided by the popular vote, the Republicans would have lost, would not have won a race really since George Bush. And that's W. So as you can see the echoes of 94 echoing in 2024, you see the roots of it there. Obama took it to another level. And I think his race had everything else to do with it and reemerged in 2008, 2009 when he started governing. And that's obviously where the lunacy became even more unhinged. It became so much more unhinged that group of Americans, Hillary Clinton called them deplorables. I didn't. I still don't. Those group of Americans feel like America is being pulled away from them. That a country of theirs is becoming increasingly black and brown, increasingly interracial, increasingly LGBTQIA plus friendly, supportive, and they even I've even seen people on these things go, more people are just becoming gay. Just don't understand it. The feeling, and it's even social things that I think maybe does not come out in terms of polling, but the fact that hip hop is the number one music in America and rock and roll is basically dead. There seems to be a shrinking presence of white people in average everyday life and discussion and commercials and other things. I had a white friend of mine, he jokingly said, but he was partly serious, that I can't watch a commercial today, this commercial just has only white people in it. And so, as Public Enemy said many years ago, there's a fear of a black planet. And so much so that these folks don't necessarily support Donald Trump in the way that other people will support them. Hey, how's it going, Black Uhuru? Good to see you. There is a real understanding that America is not theirs anymore, that it must be shared. And that's different than when the Italians came over or the Irish came over or Eastern Europeans came over and said, you must share. Because that was just a different thing. There still was certain mores culturally that Europeans shared, even as they came from different countries and different ethnic groups and societies, right? There was that real understanding that they're still white. Now America seems that it's being pulled away. There's a fear of a black planet. That's a bigger discussion, a bigger umbrella for there is a fear of change that is scary because it's not a change that we've had in America before. And so Donald Trump becomes the depository of all those grievances, the grievance of the racist, but not just racist, the grievance of the person who believes women are getting too many rights, the grievance of the person who feels like we're bending over backwards to support gays and lesbians, the fear of what transgenderism actually means and what it says, and the fear as a Christian, as I've talked about before, of Christian ideas and beliefs not being pushed aside for a secularism, for even the support and love for other faiths outside of Christianity, a respect for the Islamic faith, right? When you talk about Gaza and the like, a respect for mysticism or any other kind of religion that you could have, as long as it's not Christianity, there's a fear by a group of people, and it's not just small people in small towns in rural America. They're not just white people. There's a feeling that America is being taken away from them. Their idea of America is being taken away from them. And Donald Trump strikes a chord with them. But the roots of it, as I've just shown, started in 1994. It picked up steam with Obama's election in 2008 and his midterm in 2010, where you saw the same midterm effects in 1994 based off of Clinton's election in 1992. And so these things are not new, but I fear that we're being torn asunder in ways that we were not torn asunder in 94 or in 2010. These new ways are the ways of a country trying to leave itself, to separate from others and be unto itself. Here's an example. Donald Trump supporters will tell you these are the things that make him a good president. That he meets with dictators. They will tell you that, it's okay that he makes off-color jokes and he's had 6 bankruptcies and he's a convicted felon and that he's made lewd comments about women and that, he says he's a Christian but can't tell you anything about the Bible. Let's put all that right here. Just ask yourself this question, Trump supporters and those who may be thinking about voting for him. What if all that was true about Barack Obama? What if Barack Obama was a president who met with Kim Jong-un, a dictator? What if Barack Obama was a person, was a president who was convicted of a felon, a criminal felony? What if Barack Obama had had 6 bankruptcies, 6 businesses that he had? What if Barack Obama had cheated on his wife with mistresses and a corn star? What if Barack Obama had children by his mistresses? What if Barack Obama had started a university and then had to close it because it was a for-profit that didn't really educate anybody? What if Barack Obama had said, grab them by the you-know-whats in an interview? What if Barack Obama professed to be a Christian, but said he never repented, never asked for forgiveness, never really prayed about his mistakes? What if Barack Obama had lost 4 million jobs and had a 6.3% unemployment rate when he left office? We know what the answer would be. He would be fricasseed and filleted open by Fox Entertainment every day and of the week and twice on Sundays. So my commentary my way this week is just cautioning people who are on the other side. I understand why you're on the other side. I understand why you support Donald Trump. I understand your grievances. I understand how you feel about this country and what you really want this nation to look like. But to support a man like Donald Trump and all the things that you are willing to excuse in order to support him, my only question is, if any other person, any other president had done half of what this man had done, would you be so forgiving? And would you still say that's somebody you could vote for to hold the most powerful office, not only in this country and in this nation, but in the entire free world? That's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for rocking with your boy. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Bruce, for being here. And we're going to rock and do this again next week. Remember, stay curious. Please make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. Hit the bell for notifications so you know when we go live. We go live every Wednesday, usually at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be doing more when we get closer to the election going forward. Next week, we're going to be talking about abortion. Yes, we're going to start talking about issues and having direct issue conversations with you to hear the pros, cons, the left and the right, to try to make you understand both sides of it, whether you agree with them or not. Stay curious and think. It ain't illegal yet. And I'm out.